So another item in our children's bed setting. Today I'm going to show you how to make a pillowcase. I've got a different fabric on the back, I've got a fun fox fabric on the front, and we've got a little flange and a nice border trim on here, and that border trim is double. Inside the pillowcase here we've got a nice little pocket so that when you pop the pillow in, the pillow is fully encased and this just sits nicely over the top. So I'm going to explain to you how I've done that. I'm going to give you some measurements so that if you want to have a go yourself, that's fine. I'm making a pillowcase for a standard pillow. They measure something like 19 inches by 29. I'm not sure of the exact measurements, but that's the size I'm making the pillowcase for a standard pillow. So for the backing, because it's going to have that turnaround to make the little pocket for the pillow to sit inside, I've cut everything that's for the pillowcase 19.5 inches wide, and then I've made this piece 37.5 inches long to allow for that to turn back. And at one end I've already pressed in. I'm going to sew this down, but I've pressed it in 1/2 inch twice to give myself a nice little hemmed edge, so I'm going to just stitch along there shortly. I'll just show you the rest of the cutting here though. So for the front, for the nice novelty fabric, again it's 19.5 inches wide, and I've cut this one 25.5 inches long because I'm going to be adding on to the end the nice bordered trim. And then the little flange piece, again 19.5 inches long this time, and it's just a strip of fabric that's 1 inch wide, and I've pressed that in half already so that it finishes up at a 1/2 inch width, and that's actually going to sit along that edge of the pillow fabric. And then for my border trim, where I've got on this nice foxy one, a nice lighter colour here, I'm actually going to have this darker grey on the edge of my pillow here. And so I've cut that piece, because it ends up being double, I've cut that piece 9.5 inches wide, and again 19.5 long, or wide, whichever way you want to look at it. So 9.5 by 19.5. And so to make the pillowcase like that, so we'll start off doing this little trim bit on the front here. So at my left, if your fabric's a one-way fabric, you need to decide which way you want the pillowcase to open. I'm going to have my opening on your right, my left. So because this is a one-way fabric, you need, some fabrics are one-way fabrics with a pattern, some are multi-directional, and then they don't matter so much, but this one needs to be a certain way, and I've chosen to do it this way. So I'm going to lay that down. I'm going to lay my already folded in half flange, and I'm not going to use pins because I've got these wonderful clips that don't dig into me like pins do. But first of all, with the trim, I'm going to lay the trim down right side up, that nice contrasting piece. Then I'm going to lay the pillowcase also right side up on top of that so that those raw edges line up, and then I'm going to lay the flange on top of that, again lining up the raw edges. And I'm just going to, you can pin this if you haven't got these wonderful clips, but the clips are so good. I'm just going to pop some clips in there instead of pins, because pins like to attack me. But sometimes you need to hold some things together. I do realise that. So I'll pop a few of those along there, and they hold really well. These little clips actually are by Clover, and they really hold well. So I've got my trim right side up, my pillowcase fabric right side up, and my folded flange piece in place there. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and just using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch along that edge. And then I'll show you how to finish off the trim so that it sits just the way you want it to, and no raw edges on the seams and ends. So just this ordinary 1/4 inch seam allowance works really well here. Oops. Took the clip out too soon. So I'm just about at the end of the seam here. So that's all nicely joined together, and it all looks a little bit back to front, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do now, because we want this piece to come around and we want it to be sewn so that that's a nice edge on there and no seams showing, I'm going to roll this pillowcase piece up. Remember that was sitting down like that, okay? So we had that piece behind when we were sewing it. So I'm rolling up the pillowcase piece so that it'll fit within, and then I'm going to bring this edge around and I'm going to re-sew that seam now. And yes, I could perhaps have done it all in one go, but I'm always a little bit scared that the flange might move a little bit, so I would prefer to do 2 lots of the sewing rather than have it wobble around too much and then it's not going to sit right. So again, I'm going to come back with my little clips here, and then I'm going to sew that same seam again with all this pillowcase part rolled up inside. Pretty weird, hey? It will work there. And it's nice because it's a nice neat finish at the end. So again, back to the sewing machine. And we'll do that again. The 1/4 inch seam allowance will just sit on top of the previous line of sewing. Just coming to the end of my seam line here. It's looking good. My threads. But it's all inside. Oh no, what do we do now? What we do is we pull that out. Just work it out gently. And what we end up with, we'll give that a little press, is no raw edges, a nice trim on the end of our pillowcase. So I'll just bring the iron over and get that all pressed in place. So the only thing about this is you just got to kind of make sure that the back is sitting out. We might press it from the back first so that it presses in nicely there. Make sure that everything's sitting right on both sides, and just press that over so that it all is sitting nicely and you don't get any little tucks in there. Then we'll turn it over and press it from the right side where we have potentially got tucks but we're not actually going to have any. So we're going to press that little fold out. We'll just press along the seam line first and then we'll go back and press the actual fold on the edge. So that's all sitting nicely. We've got our flange sitting nicely there with a little blue trim. And then we'll come here and then we can just press a nice fold on the very edge there. And so there we've already done the front of the pillowcase. That's great. We've just got to make it up into a pillowcase now. So we've got that little flange sitting there and this nice trim on the edge, all seams nicely enclosed. So I'm just going to stitch. Remember, I pressed already the end of my pillowcase. I haven't stitched it yet, so I'm just going to stitch that now, and then I'll show you how to put it all together so that it all works. And you might move the iron so that you can see. So much fun to make bedding accessories. Never mind the children, I'd like them myself. Okay, so I've got a nice little hemmed edge on my pillowcase. All the other 3 edges are all raw edges still. I've got my little trim nicely done on this. So what we're going to do is lay that right sides together with all the raw edges together. Let's move this out of the way for the moment. And so the backing is longer. So we're going to have these so that everything is sitting nicely. Everything should sit quite well because you've cut everything out the same size. Okay, and so then with this piece here, we'll just bring this over the front as we're looking at it at the moment, and we can pop a couple of pins in, or again I'm back with my trusty clips just to hold them in place. And then we're going to sew around the 3 sides. So just make sure everything's sitting nicely and lined up here. Put a couple of clips in there, and we'll do the same on this side. Make sure those edges are sitting together. And we're just about ready to sew around the edge, and it's nearly done. So I usually start at one side and I come around all 3 sides, and then I'm going to overcast, but I'll do that in a minute. I'll show you what we're doing. So again, just using your 1/4 inch seam allowance is usually enough. So using some of these lovely cotton fabrics, it makes lovely bedding because it is 100% cotton, and they've just got a lovely feel to them. So your child is going to sleep beautifully on these. Okay, so just leave the needle down, and you can pivot at the end and turn the corner, come along the other side. When you get to your corner, we're just going to leave the needle down, and then you can just pivot that. And come all the way across to the next corner. Okay, so I'm just about back around the other side. So when you come up to this, just make sure that that slips under nicely, which of course it will. So that's that pillowcase all sewn, and you could just leave it like that with that raw edge on it. However, I think it would be very nice if it didn't have that raw edge on it, so I'm actually going to overcast my edges now. And to do that, I like to use a zigzag stitch. So if you're going to do that on your sewing machine, make sure that you've got a foot on that will allow the needle to swing. You don't want it on one that doesn't have much of a space, because you'll break a needle, which is not a good look. So I'm going to switch my machine onto zigzag. And I'm going to come all the way around again, just with the zigzag, and that just overcast those edges so that they won't fray and things, particularly with washing and things like that. So back stitch at the beginning. So I'm just sewing over the edge of the raw edges. So if you've got any threads sticking out as you go that are a little bit long, you can just snip those off, because you don't want those hanging around either. And there we have it. We'll snip our threads off. And so I've gone all the way around those 3 sides of the pillowcase with that overcasting, and yes, there's a couple of threads just sticking out. These are just little fray threads, which you can just trim off now because it's not going to fray anymore because you've done the overcasting. So it all looks great. I'm just going to turn it out the right way and we'll have our pillowcase. So I'm going to pop that turn back first, pop those corners out so that you get a nice sharp corner there. And then you need to bring the whole of the pillowcase out the right way. And again, pop your little corners out so that you've got nice little sharp corners there. These just feel so lovely as pillowcases because of this lovely cotton fabric. So nice. And now it just needs a press. But basically, there we have a very delicious Woodland Friends pillowcase. How nice is that? We've got a nice one on the other side. We've got that. We've got our little turn back where the pillow will sit inside so that everything stays on and in place when we're having delicious sleeps on our pillowcases. So next time there's going to be another video in this series. There's still another couple to go. We're going to show you that this is a children's set in general, although of course it could be for an adult. We thought we'd have a little bit of fun, and every child who sleeps in a bed like this has to have a little nightcap, little hat to wear to bed. So I'm going to show you that in the next video, how to make one of those. So that's it for the pillowcase for now. Thank you.